I attended the 2023 NBA Combine. What did I glean about the prospects the Jazz could be interested in at number 9, at number 16, and at number 28? And what strategies could be in play to approach these picks? Find out next on Locked On Jazz.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
My name's Leif, Thulin. I'm honored to have the opportunity to fill in for David Locke this week and throughout the next month or so of the season, not on the season, but of the summer and the important drafting season on Locked On Jazz. I'm a lifelong Utah Jazz fan who's a credentialed NBA draft analyst for Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, attendee of the 2023 NBA Combine, Utah Jazz broadcast assistant for the past 2 seasons, as well as statistician. So don't expect all of the geeky numbers of usual to be gone, but I'll bring a unique perspective as a diehard college hoops fan, a draft analyst, and a Jazz fan to make you guys as knowledgeable as possible about your Utah Jazz as we head to a critical juncture in the franchise's history with 3 draft picks this year and a ton in the foreseeable future. Thanks for making Locked On Jazz your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On Jazz is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube at Locked On Jazz, where the best way to help us grow the show is to comment anything below. And today's question is, who would you rather draft, a guard or a wing at number 9? Let me know below, and I'll try my best to interact with you guys on that. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100, with promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On, LOCKEDON. Roadmap for today, just in case you guys are interested. The first segment, I'll break down my thoughts on the players most commonly associated with the 9th pick and what I believe to be the strategies in play, breaking down position by position who the Jazz could be interested in. In the second segment, it'll be a little bit more of the first, but I'll discuss the NBA Combine, what I observed and heard about the top prospects, who the Jazz could be interested in. I think I'll go with the first segment. I'll talk a bit more about the guards, and the second I'll talk more about the wings, and I'll give my insights on the players available at 9 as a diehard hoops fan, the college hoops fan, that is, who studies the draft, and see if that changes from a lot of the statistical approaches that David Locke brings you, which I think are also valuable, and I'll definitely reference some of those numbers as well, as I definitely am not anti-statistics. And lastly, I'll break down the players I think helped their stocks this week at the Combine for the Jazz and who they could be interested in at both 16 and 28, because so much focus is put at 9, but those are important picks that I think can help a small market franchise like the Jazz. So let's dive right in. The NBA Combine, first and foremost, is a wonderful, immersive experience, and I laid eyes on every top prospect in some capacity. Not all played, not all even did drills, but they were in attendance in some form or another, outside of the French prodigy, the presumptive number 1 pick, Victor Wembanyama, and his teammate Bilal Coulibaly, who could be in play for the Jazz around somewhere, but they were finishing their French season, so they were not in attendance. But everyone else I laid eyes on, and some of them I conversed with, and others I watched them do pro days, and I'll get into that further. Let's start at the top. Who are the most coveted prospects who could be in play at 9? And like I mentioned at the outset, I'll talk to you about the guards first. Many break it down into position groups and who fits needs. I typically tend to go best player available, but there is something to be said for talking about needs for the Jazz and how it is different because the Jazz are set in the front court. They've got Walker Kessler, someone who exceeded all feasible expectations you can place on a rookie picked at 22nd, and now he's your anchor in the middle. Lauri Markkanen, you acquire for an all-star, and you get back an all-star along with Ochai Agbaji, who's the third guy that you would say is the least likely to be moved for the Jazz. The Jazz then have Colin Sexton, and the Jazz have him as a 2 guard. So what's the position that's really open? That's the point guard. And what do you want? A little bit of size. So that's where a strong suit of the draft is this year. But the question is, do you take a guard? Do you take a wing? So let's talk about the pluses and minuses, who fits the needs, and my thoughts on them as college players and as draft prospects, and what I may have heard about them at the NBA Combine, because for those of you who don't know, there's a million people there, all high up in the NBA. I saw Will Hardy. I saw Danny Ainge. I saw tons of the Jazz scouts among A lot of other people, you hear agents spreading rumors. How much to glean is true? I couldn't tell you. It was my first time, but it was unbelievable. But it was exhausting mentally. You heard so much, you wanted to hear more. So the two guys that are linked with the Jazz the very most that are guards are both big guards who are defensively oriented, that can guard their space, guard their yard is a common expression. And that's Cason Wallace from Kentucky and Anthony Black of Arkansas. And here, those are the candidates. So I'll start with Anthony Black because I think he was tied with the Jazz more frequently early in the process. And now I feel like it's trending towards Wallace. But I'll start with Black. Early in the year, Anthony Black was regarded as a two guard due to his size. And Nick Smith Jr. was the presumptive top college guard coming into this draft, and he was the one. But quickly into the season, Arkansas played Anthony Black as the one. He did a very good job doing so. And with haste, he raised his stock and jumped up boards as high as top fives I saw from national pundits. Anthony Black has superb size and very good athleticism. He's 6'5", and 3/4 without shoes, with a 39-inch vertical. He's a tenacious point-of-attack defender. And as the season went on, his athleticism remained and his ability to get to the paint remained, but his finishing was on and off. You didn't see him having those open court dunks as he played better teams and the teams that scouted Arkansas, who was horribly spaced. They had no shooting capacity as a team, nor just individually good shooters. They were athletic and tried to play downhill, but he was the one guy that could infiltrate into the middle of a defense and kick out. He just didn't get as many assists as you'd think because their team was so bad at shooting. He doesn't necessarily create a ton of space for himself to shoot, and he's not exactly the most individually gifted scorer, but he's able to get to the rim and put a tremendous pressure on there. The main thing you hear as a downside with Anthony Black is his shooting struggles. He shot 30% from three. He was an average. They listed him as good or average with 59th percentile rim finishing, but his floater was very poor, and his three-point shooting on the catch was not very good either. So there are limitations there, but he has a high floor, and that's something that's important because I think their upside is also there should his shot come around, but that is a big if. He has passing chops that I think are superior to that of Cason Wallace's, but he really did struggle to score, and that's where Cason Wallace has the advantage. So on to Cason Wallace. He grew into his position as a point guard at Kentucky. He kind of took over for the incumbent starter, Xavier Wheeler, who the year prior was an all-SEC selection. You don't see that too often from freshmen, especially when he was billed as a two-guard. He never played point guard very much ever, as he grew up kind of bigger than most people, played the forward. He developed his range late. You've heard Rafael Barlow, my coworker on NBA Big Board, talk about this many a time as he documented his story from fourth grade on. And that's pretty tremendous for someone that has never played point guard to just take the spot of a guy that's an upperclassman who was all conference. And that's exactly what Cason Wallace did. Wallace is someone that defends at a high level, drawing comparisons to Drew Holiday and Marcus Smart. Those are the preeminent defensive guards that are not enormous in the NBA. He can shoot spot ups. Per synergy, he's got the qualification of good, 59th percent on spot up shooting, very good at guarded catch and shoots at 67%, and he hits mid-rangers at an absurd level, getting to a spot wherever he wants coming off the pick and roll, and his pick and roll numbers were very nice. He hit 97th percentile, which is excellent, from short shots to 17 feet. And Kentucky guards, I'm going to give him a little boost here, which I don't know if it's fair, but Emmanuel Quickley, Tyrese Maxey, Devin Booker, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I could go on and on. They all seem to really thrive in the NBA. And so I think he'll have a bigger role and it'll be embraced by him. The downsides of Cason Wallace. This one's a little interesting. I walked by Cason Wallace at the Combine about 3 times in an hour on Thursday at the Combine. And I'm about 6 foot, maybe 6'1" with shoes. And Cason Wallace was wearing shoes, normal size soles, and he was maybe an inch taller than me. I know he's listed in some measurables with shoes at 6'4", but I have my concerns about getting a big guard because you want to complement someone who's a diminutive guard in Colin Sexton with a bigger guard who has ball skills. I'm not horribly worried about that, but I thought that's an interesting tidbit you guys should know. The other downside that's on a basketball court as opposed to me just hearsay walking by him, he's not as gifted as a playmaker as someone like Anthony Black. He's not naturally a point guard, which means he could have untapped potential there, or he just may not have the passing chops that many point guards you desire to have. But in a league where there's more and more guys that are able to handle the ball, that becomes less important, but it's still worth noting in my opinion. Last guard who has size is wing Osar Thompson, who is polarizing as he's tremendously athletic, but he's played the 2 guard all year against guys younger than him. And he hasn't ran the point, but he is not shot well. So my question is, can he shoot it and play the 2, or is he a 1? And that's what we're trying to draft him as. And if he slips to the Jazz at 9, I think you'd want him to play the 1. I just wonder if he's got the chops to do that. I personally think he could develop into a point guard, but it's a long-term investment rather than an immediate one. Whereas his immediate defensive appeal and slashing could be effective, but there is a risk involved there drafting a guy who hasn't played the point guard to play the point guard. Coming up next, we will talk about the possible wings the Jazz could draft at 9 and breakdowns of their games with positives and negatives. But first, let me tell you all about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is something that we've told you about time and time again. Let me tell you about PrizePicks and from my perspective. I'm someone that likes to place wagers on games. I've done it in so many sports. My favorite one to do PrizePicks on is actually tennis. And I know that's funny because tennis is not one you think, wow, players can do that. But PrizePicks allows you to do that even. But if you guys are listening to this show, you probably are thinking, okay, what is he talking tennis for? We want basketball. So I'll give you something you'll care about. Every day of the NBA playoffs, and as the finals are approaching, as the series are at 3-0 and 3-0, which, you can't predict, one PrizePicks user will win a chance at becoming a millionaire. One entry placed after 8 a.m. Eastern time every day will be selected, and whoever placed that entry will be given a 6-pick flex with the following payouts. 6 correct picks out of 6 is $1 million. 5 correct picks out of those 6 is $80,000. 4 correct picks out of those 6 is $16,000. Full details can be found at prizepicks.com/million. You must opt in at this link and be eligible for the $1 million entry. Once you opt in, all you have to do is play the game like normal, and you could be the lucky winner. So best of luck to you guys. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100 back. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50 back. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Well, hopefully these guys that are being selected, you can have as a PrizePicks option for the Jazz. I'm not saying all of them will be there, but maybe they could be. So let me give you the bunch of wings that I'm very intrigued in for the Jazz. They are Villanova's Cam Whitmore, Houston's Jarris Walker, UCF's Taylor Hendricks, and South Carolina forward Gigi Jackson. Let me start in the order I just listed them, and I'll give you the appeals, the downsides, and how probable I think it is that they'll be there. Cam Whitmore is a 6'6", 235-pound freight train with ridiculous athleticism. He had sported a 40.5-inch vertical at 235 pounds. His arms were not particularly long, so you may see him falling down some boards, but I'm not terribly worried with that type of functional athleticism and testing athleticism. He has all the tools to be a big-time two-way wing in the NBA. Here are the pros of Cam Whitmore. He has all the athletic tools I just said and measurables. He's a workout warrior and someone who functionally does it. And then he shot very well per synergy. And I told you the geeky stats weren't all going away. He was 86th percentile in spot-up shooting. Excellent. 90th percentile in isolation. Excellent. That talks about athleticism and creation ability. That's a really rare stat right there to see an excellent for a freshman there. 65th percentile in transition. Very good. That talks about athleticism and finishing ability. 77th percentile at the rim. Quantified as very good. That's touch and athleticism. 85th percentile at guarded, unguarded catch and shoots. Excellent. 79th percentile guarded. Very good. 91st percentile on what's called an early jumper, which is basically like a one dribble pull-up. And that's classified as excellent. Not to mention he's young. Cam Whitmore is 19. Cam Whitmore was playing in the U18s about a year ago today. That's really impressive. Those numbers, if you were to take a freak athlete who shoots it that well, you're not going to often see him at 9. I don't think he goes to 9, but if he does, I would hope the Jazz do not hesitate. I really think he could be awesome. So what are the downsides? Why isn't he a top 5 pick by unanimous decision with that? He did not show an ability to pass. Really struggled passing the ball. But that said, there's a context. He played for Villanova with a team that was veteran, but had a new coach, and his role was oftentimes to score. And he missed the beginning of the season with a thumb injury and kind of lost some rhythm playing at the beginning of the year. He was inconsistent defensively, but when Villanova played their best, he guarded the best player on the opposition. And he didn't score a ton at Villanova. So some people will say, well, if he's all that, why didn't he score? I think there's so much to like that's nitpicking. And he was the most talented player on a poor team, but he was a freshman. So those are the main complaints. Like, he didn't score well as being the best player on a bad team. Okay, next guy, Jarris Walker. Physical tools galore as well, similar to Whitmore, but their college situations couldn't be much more different despite similar counting stats. He was a freshman on a veteran-laden top 5 team in America that was a number 1 seed in Houston, had an All-American point guard who could go in the first or maybe beginning of the second round in Marcus Sasser. Jarris Walker is 6'7", 245 pounds with a long wingspan. It's 7'2". Is scored 11 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, and shot 35% from 3 as a freshman. The pros, the obvious. He's a tremendous athlete. Defensive instincts are off the chart, and he's got the ability to disrupt by guarding multiple positions. He accumulates stocks. He rotates beautifully, rebounds the ball. And one of my favorite skills he possesses is he passes the ball, shows really good decision-making and tremendous passing flashes. Negatives for Jarris Walker. Who knows what his role will be, as he's hardly played with the ball in his hand at that level. And it's hard to project, oh, man, if this guy hasn't played with the ball in his hand, like, why are we taking a top 10 pick on him? Like, typically for teams in the top 10, you're taking this guy to change the trajectory of your franchise. So it's difficult to project him to do so right away. But I spoke to a guy who was an agent for a prevalent agency. I won't list who to keep his anonymity. But they'll have 2 first-rounders, maybe 3. And he said to me, if he played in the SEC like Brandon Miller or G.G. Jackson, rather than on a loaded Houston team with that many veterans, and the example he gave was Ole Miss, a team that was not very good, but you could put up impressive stats against good competition. He said he'd score 18 and 9 and be a top 5 pick with no hesitation. So that's a lot of confidence for a guy who really knows basketball, and I really appreciated that insight. I also doubt he'll be there for the Jazz. I just mentioned G.G. Jackson, someone I've been high on the entire process of the draft season since the college season started. He reclassified up, went to South Carolina, which was puzzling because he was going to go to North Carolina, but he wanted to develop his game and get the ball more frequently. And I actually think that helped him. But there were some growing pains. He didn't necessarily put up the most efficient stats. He was on a very poor South Carolina team. But let's talk about what he can do. He's 6'9", 200 pounds. He's unbelievably fluid. I saw him up close twice. I went to his practice for his pro day because I just happened to be in the gym at weird hours because I was recording podcasts for Locked On NBA Big Board. And I went onto the court after we finished recording and watched him play as a practice, as a simulation for how he'd do in the pro day. He shot pretty well that day, and you saw the fluidity and the creativity that you don't see very often for a 6'9" player that is 18 years old. That's the pro. The downside, he accumulated poor stats, poor efficiency. I'm not terribly worried about that. But then he didn't look necessarily sharp in his pro day. There were rumors that he was sick. I overheard that he was sick, but he looked horribly fatigued like 10 minutes in and shot poorly in his pro day. And the last thing is he's a bit of a project. I don't think he's ready to help you win right away. So if the Jazz were to take him, the Jazz don't have aspirations to be a champion team like next year. They do have the aspirations, but the feasibility is unlikely. I would love it, and as would you guys, but it's difficult to expect that a team, no matter which rookie you're taking here, could really elevate you that far, barring some miraculous trades. So the immediate impact might be lesser, but he could have star power. That's the last one. That's the last point, is basically if he hits, he really could hit, but he's got higher likelihood to struggle early on. The last top 10 caliber wing is the exact opposite. He was a top 10 caliber wing in this draft, top 10 pick caliber, but he wasn't on anyone's radar a year ago. He's got a beautiful shooting stroke. This is Taylor Hendricks, and the defensive chops as a rim protector who also can slide his feet. The pros, shot 40% from 3. He's 6'8" and a quarter without shoes on, nearly 7-foot wingspan, who can switch and rim protect. Awesome. Fits into the Jazz beautifully in between Kessler and Markkanen. He's also got a high skill level. I think he'll be able to shoot. Like a lot of the same skills that he possesses are those that we lauded Jabari Smith Jr. for, who was at this point last year likely the number 1 pick. He ended up going number 3 and had some growing pains in his rookie year. But that's the same point this last year. Those are all the things that people made the argument for Jabari going number 1. Downside, there's less star upside. And in a smaller market like the Jazz, you often need to hit on these type of picks and have a star to really change the trajectory of your franchise. The Jazz have good players, and they don't necessarily have to get a star here. They could get more good players, and they've got years to do so with the franchise having accelerated their timeline the past year, with Lowry, Markkanen, and Walker Kessler being well above what was expected and having picks to come, and the trading acumen of Danny Ainge. But there's less upside, and that is a downside for someone like Taylor Hendricks. So this begs the question: do the Jazz go with a guard at 9 and a wing at 16, a wing at 9 and a guard at 16, or strictly best player available? And who's available in either outcome? The Jazz are fortunate to be in a situation with multiple picks and the foundation in place. And the picks in the future make this a tricky question. And we'll delve into this tomorrow. Every dayers, shout out to you guys. Look forward to that episode tomorrow. And make sure to let me know what you guys want to hear in the future. But that one's a fun one. And I'm very excited to give that my thoughts on that situation to you guys tomorrow. What should Danny Ainge do? Do you want guard and then wing then guard? Do you want the best player available strictly and see what happens? But tomorrow, that's for you guys. But right now, let me tell you about Murdoch Chevy. Murdoch Chevy has been in Utah for over 80 years. Murdoch Chevy is synonymous. Like, first of all, Chevy is synonymous with American. Like, if you're thinking of an American movie, what type of trucks in the background? It's a Chevy. It just hands down it is. Located in Woods Cross and in Logan, you can get them at a variety of places. There's a great lineup of Chevy trucks, the Colorado and the Silverado. You can see what's in store online. You can go in. You can contact the great people at Murdoch Chevy in both locations. Go to the website and see the latest deals and check what is in stock. The amazing lineup of SUVs with the Tahoe, the Suburban, to the Blazer, the Equinox, and the Trax are all available. And recently, I had to get a car to fill myself for a month as my car was in the shop. And I went with a Chevy, and I've got nothing but glowing reviews for you guys. I highly recommend it, and make sure to contact the great people at Murdoch Chevy and get yourself a Chevy. Welcome back into Locked On Jazz. I'm Leif Thulin. I attended the combine and paid close attention to these prospects, and I think they could be play at 16 and potentially even 28 with a focus on what do I believe the Jazz need to prioritize. Okay, what do I mean by that? The Jazz have so much riding for them at 9 and 16. Those are the ones that get all the attention, specifically 9. But I think this is an interesting segment. So what I'm going to tell you is, after being at the combine, the players that actually played are rarely the lottery picks. Like, there are a few exceptions, like Jalen Williams of Santa Clara last year made his name at the lottery and got himself a lottery pick. So who improved their stock at the combine that the Jazz could pick at 16 or 28? And I'll mainly focus at 28 because I think at 16, the Jazz will take someone that falls out of the lottery that by most boards is taken in the lottery. So that could be someone like Dariq Whitehead, who had an injury, falls back, and the Jazz could take him for that. Or the Jazz may still need a guard should they take a wing, and there's a bunch of guards: Kobe Buffkin, Nick Smith, Bryce Sensabaugh, and I could go on. And I think that's what's going to happen. They're going to take someone with a skill level that's very high at number 16 that falls out of the lottery for some reason. That's my feeling. I could be wrong, and we're going to delve further into that tomorrow when I talk about the strategies with those two picks, 9 and 16, for the full episode. So who impressed me that played in the combine or I saw do pro days up close, and the Jazz brass was in full attendance. I saw Danny Ainge. I saw Will Hardy. I saw Ryan Smith. I saw unbelievable amounts of Jazz scouts swarming the building and the surrounding buildings to see everything you could see. That was immersed by all the Jazz scouts, so fear not. Also, they're phenomenal people, so I would give them a glowing review as well. So what do the Jazz want at later rounds? And this is what I personally believe, and maybe some people have differing opinions, and that's something you can tell me on the comments. I think the Jazz need to prioritize unique levels of athleticism. What do I mean by that? Unique levels of athleticism are the guys who can change a playoff series by being a shutdown defender, someone who can rebound at a level that's rare. And what type of players are available in this draft that fit that description? So I think you take an athlete to complement the budding defensive anchor in Walker Kessler, who was a cleanup man, almost the way Rudy Gobert was a few years ago, where Rudy Gobert, it was funnel to Rudy and hope he can stop, but the Jazz ran into issues because they couldn't contain the perimeter. So I would like to take an athletic, defensive-oriented player at 28. The other thing about 28, that's a first-round pick instead of a 32. So typically late-round picks, you get a guarantee. So they typically prioritize upside, and you have a longer to develop this player with a guaranteed contract, so they won't walk and go somewhere else. The ilk of player I'm trying to think of here is like Peyton Watson, someone who had a low impact on UCLA, was a good team, came in as a high regarded prospect to UCLA, only put up 3.3 points. Really, people are like, why isn't he playing in the combine? Is he even going to get drafted? Well, he goes number 30, and it looks like the Nuggets actually were right in that case because he showed athletic flashes. I don't know if you guys remember when he played the Jazz, he had a block where he was like, his head was at the rim and his arm was like 12 feet in the air and came down hard in his hip, ran the floor and got an and one the other side. And I'm not saying he's a stupendous hit. Like, he's not in their playoff rotation right now as they're one win away from getting to the NBA Finals as I record this. The question is, okay, can he contribute in the long run, and do we have time to cultivate him? So who fits that? 28 doesn't necessarily guarantee they make the team anyway, but there is talent available. Jaden McDaniels would be the glaring one that the Jazz definitely know a lot about. Also, these type of picks can help a team that has to build organically. I think that is something that's valuable to consider. So I'll tell you two guys that stood out to me, and that is Dillon Mitchell of Texas. Dillon Mitchell came in as a McDonald's All-American to a Texas team. He did not attempt a single three all year for Texas. He shot poorly from the free throw line, but he was a rim protector, a rim runner. He was basically a 6'8" center. But he showed me up close and personal that he just is a different level of athlete. I kept saying to Richard Stamen, host of Locked On NBA Big Board, said, Richard, he just moves differently than everyone else. Like, you're here in a world of unbelievable athletes, the anomalies, and he is an anomaly of the anomalies. Like, the way he walks and bounces is different than everyone else. He's got the hips of a defensive back, someone who can flip his hips and really guard on the perimeter. Then he rebounds, soars above everyone else. So he's someone I would strongly consider. And I know the Jazz brass paid close attention to him in both of the scrimmages as they were sitting 3 rows up to my left and one section over. And I could see them taking notes as I was doing the same. Dillon Mitchell, I also interacted with, and I was very impressed with his responses to my questions of asking about, hey, like, you didn't shoot any shots, and what's the reason for that, and what have you done to improve it? And he basically told me, he's like, look, we had turmoil. Chris Beard was fired, and we were amid turmoil. We had to win for our coach. I was the youngest player on the team, and we had Final Four aspirations. I tried to play my role, and now to improve my shot, I'm working with two guys, and they basically said, you know what, we're going to change your release just a tiny bit, but the mechanics aren't bad, and we just want you to rep it out because you're unfamiliar with shooting it because you didn't do it in games. So he hits a corner three in the first game of the scrimmage, and everyone's like, oh my goodness, Dillon Mitchell. Then he hits an in and out cross. He's left-handed. He goes left to right, hits a lefty baseline jumper, and he drains it. So I thought he was not going to play the second day, but I loved the fact that he did. He tried to be aggressive, didn't shoot particularly well, missed a lot of shots. The shots are working in progress. Defense, unbelievable. You get a long-term contract. That's someone I'm really high on for the Jazz at 28. Another guy that I've been really high on, I think is trending downward after the combine because he shot very poorly in his pro day, is Sidi Sissoko from France. He played on the G League Ignite, was a bit of a afterthought to Scoot Henderson and even maybe Leonard Miller. But you watch him play, his legs are like tree trunks. His calves and thighs are enormous, and he runs and jumps, slides so easily. And the shot at times during games in the G League against professionals, he shot 35% over a couple stretches of the season from three. That's pretty good. I just thought that in a pro day setting, you'd shoot better. And I think he struggled there and showed a little lack of fluidity with the basketball. So I'm being nitpicky, but you have to be when you're scouting. That said, I think people were evaluating him for a top 20 pick. So if he slides, you're getting a guy who had that type of upside at 28. I'm not sure he'll be there, but if he is, that's someone I would very much strongly consider for the Jazz. Those are two guys who both have athleticism defensive-oriented players who have upside offensively that can fill a role as switchable defenders. I think Sidy Cissoko can guard 1 through 3. I think Dylan Mitchell might even be able to guard 2 through 5. And they're both very good athletes. They're both very young. And I very much enjoyed my interaction with Dylan Mitchell. I interviewed him, and you can find that on my Twitter at Leif Thulin, which you can see here on the podcast. And Sidy Cissoko, by all accounts, is just a warm, bubbly guy from France. And I'm very curious to see where he goes in the draft, because I think a lot of people will see his upside. They just saw poor shooting in a pro day, but he'll have more workouts to go. So don't be surprised if he's not there. But those are two guys I would consider that fit my priorities for the Jazz. Let me know what you think yours are as we continue on the journey of Locked On Jazz together. In sum, the Jazz are in a very good spot, and I believe the priority is athleticism, switchability, and just ability to play unscripted basketball, ability to make basketball plays for all picks, 9, 16, and 28, or anywhere in the draft where the Jazz elect to move up should they do so. In the future episodes, we're going to talk about who fits this billing, what the strategy is for drafting. Do the Jazz go guard and then wing and then guard, or just strictly best player available, and why I think which one's the best, and I'll rank them out for you tomorrow. So stay tuned then. If you're an everydayer, I expect to hear your thoughts on today, and I look forward to talking with you guys again tomorrow. Tune in then, and thanks again for making this your first listen. And with your second listen, why don't you gather more opinions on the draft with other guys that attended the Combine with me in Rafael Barlow and Richard Salmon on Locked On NBA Big Board. And until then, have a great day, and as always, go Jazz.